Alright, so here we go with Western Indians too. Now this is going to be the cultural class as well as the battles, the major Indian battles we're going to see going forth, okay? So first off, one of the first battles we had was actually the Sand Creek Massacre. And there you can see the whole idea. Now what basically happened here is there was an army cavalry, and they basically went in and wiped out the entire village. Now upon later saying anytime we use the word massacre, there's innocent children that are involved in there. So that's not always going to be a good thing. Now upon hearing about this, there was a guy, General S.R. Curtis, and he sent a telegram to Colonel John Chivington that said, "I want no more peace till the Indians suffer more." Now this was the idea. This is an army general, and so naturally they're not going to back down. And you can see Chivington followed his orders. He killed 200 inhabitants, mostly women and children. That was Sand Creek Massacre. So not a good thing to start off with, right? But there you go. Now the next thing we have was the Bozeman Trail. Now the Bozeman Trail was a very big stretch of land, and through Montana and kind of going Oregon Trail. But it had a lot of gold. And so naturally people, these ones going west, they want the gold, correct? That's what it's about. It's about money. It's about power. Now, to the Indians, the Bozeman Trail was it was sacred hunting ground. And that meaning, to become a man, you had to kill a buffalo here. And they did not want any interference from any type of people, regardless of what was going on and what you could find in the trail. So, it became a big thing. You know, the people were settling on the trail, and the Indians were attacking them, and back and forth, and back and forth. And so the U.S. government decided, well, we're going to send people out there. Okay? And this is my episode of Good Cop, Bad Cop, all right? Or Good Indian, Bad Indian. So, Good Indian. Red Cloud wrote a letter to the U.S. government. He said, can you stop settling on the trail? This is sacred for us. There's all these other lands. Can you just leave this Bozeman Trail alone? Now, naturally, being how the U.S. government was, they decided, I ain't going to listen to you, and they're going to send Captain William J. Fetterman to protect the people on the trail. Now, as you can see there, the warrior Crazy Horse will actually ambush Captain William J. Fetterman and kill it over his men. Now, people call this the Fetterman Massacre. However, that has many different names. So, you kind of figured it out there. The bad Indian, bad cop, if you will, was a man named Crazy Horse, to whom they're erecting a big monument. Now, this is the head sculpt, and those are people going up to it, so you kind of get the idea. But when this is finished, it's going to be 3D, him on a horse, and you can go around the whole thing, and it's going to be spectacular when they get finished with it. They have blastings, and if you have Twitter, you follow the Crazy Horse Memorial, and they'll have announcements of when they're going to do blastings and things like that. If you ever have an opportunity, of course, you can go see what they've got done. Okay? Now, this angered the U.S. government very much, and so more generals were sent out there, and ultimately it resulted with something called the Treaty of Fort Laramie. Now, the Treaty of Fort Laramie basically said the Sioux Indian tribes, to which Red Cloud and Crazy Horse belonged, would live in a reservation on Fort Laramie, but they still had access to this river and things like that. Okay? He thought that this was the end. He thought that, oh, I've saved this, etc. But there was one Sioux chief who never signed any treaties, and his name was Sitting Bull. Now, here's the first really big conflict we have, and that is the white settlers said, if you're not using it and you're not mining the ore, you're not making productive use of what you have. Sitting Bull, it says right there, man belongs to the earth. Earth does not belong to the man. And if you've ever seen Pocahontas, she sings all the colors of the wind, correct? All the colors. But the whole idea is that the earth has a spirit, and how can you earn something that has a spirit? And so this is a big conflict going forth, okay? Now, Sitting Bull is going to come back very famously in the rest of these, but for right now, we're going to leave them there, okay? Now, this takes us to the Red River War. Again, we have a colonel, and he's living on the border of Oklahoma and Texas, which is fall college football, why they call it the Red River Rivalry or Red River War, when these two schools play every year, and they've been doing it for years. But in this little area, and you can see it on the map there, There was a bunch of different battles between U.S. Army units and Comanche and Sioux and Cheyenne and Apache, all put together raids. Ultimately, the U.S. government proved too handily, and these Indians retreated. Okay, that takes us to a man who earned his name, Buffalo Bill. Now, Buffalo Bill, not a football player. Okay, Buffalo Bill got his name because he killed buffalo. That's what he did. So, Buffalo Bill went around. He killed these massive numbers of buffalo to pave the way for the railroads. Naturally, you have to get him out of the way, and we'll get into that more in a second. But also, he set up kind of the first kind of rodeo, I guess would be the way of putting it, comical rodeo. It was called the Wild West Show. You had people like Calamity Jane and all these different things. And he would go from town to town, and his favorite story was that of cowboys and Indians. Okay? As in Indians as Indians. Now, famously, an Indian chief gave himself up to prevent any more bloodshed. His name was Sitting Bull. So, unfortunately for Sitting Bull, he was not only forced to surrender once, but nightly. And naturally, you can imagine the Indians would attack these innocent white settlers who weren't doing anything bad and having to be put down by the cavalry, right? This takes us all the way to a very famous general from the Civil War. His name is General George Custer. All right. Now, George Custer was sent to a specific area called the Little Bighorn River, and the whole purpose was to get these Indians to move. Why? You want to settle near a river, you want to get this access to these different things so that you can mine the gold. Well, naturally, they're not going to leave, right? So General Custer famously went to the Battle of Little Bighorn. Now, at the Battle of Little Bighorn, they basically ambushed Custer, and they wiped out his entire army unit. And they were a pretty elite army unit. And so what we had here, and we call this Custer's Last Stand. And so a lot of people were upset about this. The Indians had killed off these massive number of people. Okay? And so that was the end of cultural clash and our battles. Now, along the line of Indian chiefs, if you're into music and you like things like that, there was a band called Audio Slave. Audio Slave was Rage Against the Machine with Chris Cornell from Soundgarden. And that might seem dated to you. I'm sorry. But they actually did a song called Cochise. And Cochise was a great Indian warrior, and it's very kind of just explosive and full of energy. And the whole purpose was to show that this man was full of energy, and why did he get this, all right? That was it for our second video. You got one more, then you got to take that quiz, right? All right.